Now, most people don't even know that work within these industries that that's indeed where that is going. But most of what is pulled out of the ground here in the United States does not go to the United States for consumption. It goes to China. And that's something where it's very interested. They're very interested in creating an equilibrium of these currencies to be able to have the ability to not, lose their shirts buying the resources they need. This is why China has bought up all of our treasury bonds, owns all of our debt. And with gold being in there, what that does is that gives the bankers the ability to be able to manipulate the currency in the same exact way that they manipulate the dollar now. That's what I can't understand about, like you mentioned, with these gold bugs or Ron Paul followers or anybody else can understand, because they're just going to manipulate gold when it's in a new basket of currency in a way that benefits them, so they can create deflationary status. And then once they create a big deflationary status of this new currency in this basket of currencies, they come in, as they always do, buy it all up, and then resume the game in a different form. It's the same old plan. And heading into 2011, I can't believe they continue to run these same plans, and we just sit back and watch it and go, yep, there they go again.
Well, yeah, I mean, they have been doing this for a very long time. I mean, you can look at the history of money, and I've gone into this a great deal in the work that I've done. And you see how the bankers and the money changers, now, of course, the Rothschild family and all these are subsidiary bankers that you see that really feed off of these central banking systems. You see how they manipulate the currencies and the value of the currencies in order to control the individual economies. So they create these boom and bust cycles. So as a result, they end up with all the wealth. And that's really what's happening to this country, as is happening to all the European countries. They're sucking the wealth out of the middle class and the poor into the rich. And they're doing this so they can create this system where you have the elite at the top, and then you have a large lower class of slaves that can be manipulated as they see fit. And that's exactly what's happening. But Josh, I just want to shift gears real quick. And I kind of wanted to get a little bit more into this whole WikiLeaks thing, because I remember back in 2009 at the end of the year show that we did, we mentioned this year, in 2010, being the year of a potential game changer. And the one event that I think really served as a game changer this year was undoubtedly this whole WikiLeaks situation, because what we're seeing now is we're seeing this event that I believe has been staged. I think this whole thing is a massive operation. And even if you don't agree that's an operation, they now have the excuse to go in and enact and implement all sorts of controls over the internet. And we're already starting to see that with the FCC, these copyright laws. It's ridiculous what they're doing. So what's your take on WikiLeaks, and what do you see happening going on to the future as it pertains to this whole situation?
Well, I really sort of struggle to even mention everything I that I believe about this WikiLeaks thing, because some of it's insane. I don't know. I mean, I've heard everything from the Assange family or a bunch of Nazis to everything else. I mean, there's pictures of them where they, as a kid, where they look like a bunch of Aryan test tube babies. I don't know if you've ever seen this picture before. It's pretty funny, but
it sounds pretty funny. I'd like to see it. Actually,
it is pretty funny. I'll have to send it over to you. It's a picture of the Assange family, and they literally look like Nazi test tube babies. They're all blonde, very Aryan looking, very German looking, and there's a lot of information that ties a lot of the family to people like Mangala and MK Ultra, and then of course with some of the other stuff we've heard about with some 3 or 4 of these guys out of WikiLeaks being former Mossad agents. This has been the perfect storm of being able to shut down alleged truth tellers, and now they're going to lump in people who talk about conspiracy theories or people who talk about alternative news with people like with Assange and things of that nature, where your average person is not going to know the difference between classified information and something that is just flat not talked about in mainstream culture. So I see this sort of climate building where people out there in the world could really start to think that people who talk about issues and topics of information that they don't hear about on the evening news. Oh, are you one of those WikiLeaks guys? Where people who are telling the truth are starting to be seen as criminals and rapists and whatever other kind of attack that they label on this guy. This whole thing to me from the very beginning has seemed like an operation. None of the real, no real hard stuff that we didn't already know has come out of these leaks. There continues to be a whole raft of propaganda surrounding them of things that, oh, they're going to release this in WikiLeaks, and then it never comes out, and then we find out that's disinformation. So this has been a huge step towards finally locking down the existing internet, finally bringing in Internet 2. They were going to bring Internet 2 in either way. That's the whole thing. Sun Microsystems started installing the backbones for Internet 2 several years ago. This is the technology that will bring us into holographic gaming, holographic films, the really the true grid. It makes me wonder if this doesn't also have something to do with changing over our existing world over to a matrix-like grid where
augmented reality.
An augmented reality. I start to see that this is the beginning stages of that. So I think that they needed an event to basically rationalize the things that are going to be happening over the next several years with the existing internet and the new grid they're going to be bringing online. And I think this was the perfect way for them to be able to rationalize and justify all the things they were really going to do anyway. But this whole WikiLeaks thing to me has been the way that they are going to sell the need to do away with the existing internet and bring in the new grid in the future. And by naming all the things that, this is national security, blah, 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 this. And, you got to hand it to them. This was the perfect way to do it.
Yeah, we see Joseph Lieberman, of course, he's been pushing that Espionage Act. And, of course, that ties into everything that you've just talked about. But, it's interesting, since we brought up the whole situation with technology, I'm not sure if you saw this, but it looks like Apple is apparently they're developing this holographic 3D technology that will essentially, it's my understanding that it would be just like in Star Wars when R2-D2 has the image of Princess Leia. And that's the type of stuff that's going to be coming out in the next decade or so. So this whole notion of augmented reality, I think, is a very distinct possibility. And then this gets us into the next steps of where is technology going to take us. And we've had many discussions about this before, Josh, about what's going to happen over the next 100 or so years and how it kind of gets into transhumanism. And we might as well just get into it now since this subject is on the table. But in the next 10, 20, 30 years, where do you see technology taking us? How soon do you think we're going to see artificial intelligence introduced into mainstream reality? Now, there's a very distinct possibility that artificial intelligence has already been developed by either DARPA or by these secretive government agencies, some agency that we might not even know exists for all we know. It's very difficult to say. But where do you see this whole thing coming into play in terms of them introducing this type of technology to society? Because you have people like Ray Kurzweil and our futurists that are predicting over the next several decades that we will see some form of artificial intelligence come into being. I know you've looked into this stuff a great deal, so I'd like to get your take on this.
Well, I think that we are right now in the throes of all of the things, just as we were mentioning before about now how they're selling this WikiLeaks thing as the reason why they're going to bring in the new existing internet and do away with the old one. I think we're also living in the time now where all the things that are happening around us, from the agenda for global warming and the agenda for all this environmental stuff, combined with now the push for further integration, with social networking, smartphones, all of this stuff is the very beginning stages of that. And also with the rise of health ailments, cancer rates skyrocketing, diabetes rates skyrocketing, all of these things are the perfect storm that will be the buildup to selling mankind on this idea. I think first, as we talked about just a bit ago, they're going to sell us on the idea of why we need to do away with, states and nations, and all this stuff needs to have an equilibrium with it, and everything needs to be equal across the board. I hate to derail, but recently, over the past, you probably talked about this on your show yesterday, these new archaeological findings and things that they're coming out with that seem to be challenging the foundations of science, seem to be challenging the foundations of religion. I think we're going to start to see that rolled out more onto us, and it definitely ties in with the transhumanist thing, because essentially I think they're going to show the flaws of science, the flaws of religion, and then say, okay, well, this is why all this has been misinterpreted. And then selling people on the idea of the quote unquote fountain of youth and immortality, and selling people on the idea of being able to extend their lives, to be able to do away with human ailments and misery. I mean, there's going to be a good portion of the population when they get ready to roll this stuff out on us that's not going to want to go along with that win, lose, or draw. So you're going to have a huge, huge purging of people, I think, during the time in which it becomes very apparent that the transhumanist movement is endorsed as the next stage of human evolution. And that's exactly what they call it in their own words. The transhumanists call this the next stage of human evolution. And it essentially amounts to nothing more or less than the enslavement of the soul indefinitely. And I think that is, from my research into the occult and my research into secret societies, that is indeed a big part of the master plan, because they, for by hook or by crook, are in control of this realm, of this 3D dimensional realm. But outside of this, in spiritual realms, they have no power. So they want to maintain their power and supremacy through the use of technology into the future. And I've for years talked about this technology as a Trojan horse. I think it is a Trojan horse for something much bigger. They get us to build these things. They get us to build this technology, whoever, and then something else comes out of it. And I think that ultimately is what is going to come out of, is the entrapping of our souls. Because even with today's technology, they talk about being able to create a human body through the use of machines to a T. They can create a human body that is in many ways just as equal to the regular human body. But what they cannot do is they cannot animate this created human body with the essence or the soul or the spirit or the energy that a human body is. But being able to basically engage in soul entrapment and then entrapping that energy in machines indefinitely, that would give them the ability to be able to control this realm forever. And then there would be, no others ascending up to other realms and trapping us all here. And I think that's one of the biggest things about transhumanism that we're going to face. And I think that there are warnings. I think people are trying to warn us. I think there are a significant amount of people out there that know that this is coming a lot sooner than later. I don't think it's 20 or 30 years off anymore, Lee. I think a lot of this stuff is going to be coming to roost very close to home in the next 5 to 10 years. Not all the way, but I think that we're going to start to see things like augmentations of these livers and organs, kind of like in the movie Repo Men, where you have different organs and things that are put on the payment plan and life extension stuff. It'll start with that, and then it'll move into the ability to be able to extend your life and extend your family's life into the future through the use of cybernetics and probably things like cloning as well are going to be thrown in there. I think that I remember back in 2005 they talked about processing power, where processing power would be in 20 years. Now, just 5 years later, we are at the processing power that they predicted would be 20 years off in 2005. So what's it going to be 5 years from now? Many people that predict 2015 is a big year, where the way technology is exponentiating right now, there's a very real possibility the singularity could be here as early as 2015, even 2020, not 20, 30 years off like people had originally thought. But I think this is how they're going to sell us on saving the planet, stopping global warming, stopping overpopulation. I think that ultimately the big grand finale of this whole thing that we spend our time talking about, Lee, is transhumanism.
Well, that certainly seems to be where it's all leading up to. And this isn't just based upon what we're seeing now. I think that's an important note to make clear to the audience, because if you take a look, again, at secret societies throughout history, there has been this obsession with the perfection of man. There's been this obsession with achieving immortality. I don't know if, Josh, you're familiar with the explorer Ponce de Leon.
Yes.
But yes, you basically have this explorer who was said to be looking for the fountain of youth so you could achieve immortality. And he, of course, didn't find the fountain of youth, but that's one of the legends that's associated with that explorer. And this is something that we've seen time and time again. So this is not a new concept, but what's happening now is that we have the technology to be able to start to do some of these things that for long periods of time have just been theorized. And so it's very interesting, especially I'm not sure if you saw this movie, Josh, but I saw this movie 10 years ago. And this kind of gets into the whole notion of cloning and all that. But The Sixth Day, I saw that when it came out in theaters.